It's Mercury retrograde. It's Mercury retrograde, and it shows, man. Let me be very honest with you. Uh, but we are live and we've made it. Today, we're talking about whether or not you should be using your intuition to guide your clients, or how you can be guiding your clients and using your intuition, but doing it in a way that allows you to actually uh, thrive and to do it sustainably. So, my name is Crystal Lynn Bell. This is the Spiritual Business Hour. I come to you every weekday at 2 o'clock p.m. And I talk to you about what it's like to have a spiritual business. And I'm really, really happy to be able to do this with you. It is a process to build your business. It is a process to get clients. It is a process to earn money and to do it consistently. And we want to be doing all this work and being successful while we are being spiritual, using our spirit guides, using our intuition, and honoring who we truly are. So, using your intuition to guide your clients is incredibly helpful, but it's not always reliable. What happens when you're upset or you're unclear? You know, if you're on your menstrual cycle and you're crampy, you still have to show up, and it is not always easy to tune into your intuition. So I want to make sure we understand that I am saying that your intuition is incredibly powerful, and it obviously has a place in your work, an important place if you are a spiritual or a heart-centered woman like I am. But intuition alone has a significant limitation. Number one, it cannot be taught, it cannot be transferred, it can't be scaled, and it can't be sold with clarity. These last two are really important because when we're talking about growing your business. So there was a time when I had just one or two clients, and then I grew that to where I was seeing anywhere between 20 and 25 clients per week. That's a lot of clients, and that's how scaling in a spiritual coaching practice, that's how it begins, right? You move from one to many. And so, yes, you want to be able to use your intuition, but when you're starting to grow, you need methods, right? And when you are trying to sell what you do, when you're trying to let people know, hey guys, I'm holding a class, we're going to be doing this, that, and the other. You can't just expect people to pay you when you say, I'm going to use my intuition to guide you. So when you're working intuitively, it is good, but it can't be all. When you're working intuitively, you are drawing on your reservoir of pattern recognition, experience, and sensitivity, and you've been building these over your entire life. The problem is that from the outside, intuition looks like magic. And while magic is totally cool, it's also not something that a potential client can truly evaluate, and they may not trust it on their first contact. And they may not understand it well enough to know whether it's really right for their specific situation. A methodology solves this problem without replacing your intuition. So it is the visible structure that houses that gorgeous, invisible intelligence that makes you who you are and gives you your unique flavor as an entrepreneur, as a spiritual leader, as a guide, as a coach. When you have a really well-defined methodology, your intuition still operates fully inside every session and every client relationship. But the client does not have to take your word for it if you know what you're doing. So this is kind of what happens with intuition, and this is where it becomes difficult to ask the average person for a big ticket price for your services. And this is where a lot of coaches don't really get it. And this is why I'm talking about this today. So if you work intuitively and people don't know you, you've got to be able to take your intuition and put it into some kind of a framework that shows you've done your homework, you've done your philosophy, and this is real. Testimonials will help people understand that it's real, but that's not always enough. It's definitely not enough for me. Any person, a spiritual healer or a spiritual coach, who approaches me and is like, oh, I can help you. My first thought is, how are you going to help me? And a lot of times people will say things like, oh, I use my intuition and I tune into my spirit guides and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I do that myself. I do that myself. I don't need you to do that for me because I do it myself. I'll tell you somebody who I will work with, though, and I will pay them a lot of money. When they say, Crystal Lynn, I'm going to help you get from point A to point B, and this is how we're going to do it. And when they promise me the outcome, I pay them. With your intuition, if you're not willing to promise the outcome, and that outcome is not, if that outcome is not measurable, tangible, and relatable, I'm not paying you. Nobody's going to pay you if you can't promise an outcome that they want. And this is why I'm talking to you today. All right. You don't want to ask people for money and then just ask them to take my word for it. You're going to feel good. She has to understand the framework. Okay. Your clients have to be able to understand the process, and they deserve, okay, they deserve to be able to evaluate whether the journey that you are describing is the journey that they want to make. And too many spiritual coaches and spiritual healers want everybody just to trust them, and they wonder why they're broke. There are also practical business reasons that matter a lot. And I'm going to pause here just for a moment, and I'm going to say, welcome again. If you are watching me live, please in the comments type #live. If you're watching the replay, please type in the comments #replay. If you have any questions about this, if you have any comments about it, please let me know. I'm happy to chat with you, and I'm happy to receive your feedback. To me, this is incredibly important. I want to see spiritual women win. I want to see you all rocking your spirituality and rocking this three-dimensional world. And I want to see you thriving in your coaching businesses. If I can do it, you can do it. And yes, I do have a method. I have everything laid out. I have more than a method. I have an entire empire that I have built, and I help spiritual women build their empires, because while I have my empire, I also understand the enormous amount of work it takes to build an empire. And it also takes an enormous amount of time to focus on that empire. And focusing on the building takes you away from the coaching that you love to do, from the coaching, from the spirituality. It takes you away from that. That's why I do the work that I do. I help you all build out your systems so that you can actually focus on coaching and focus. You can be in your feminine, creating, receiving downloads, being in front of the camera, being in front of the audience, speaking on stages, and doing things like that while I do all the architecture for the back end. I'm the masculine, you're the feminine. And it works really well because, like chocolate and peanut butter, the masculine and the feminine go really well together. So, here's my point, my friend. Without a methodology, you cannot scale because everything depends on your personal presence in every interaction. If you're using your intuition, you've got to be there. Okay. With a method, there are other things that can be there on your behalf. You cannot train other people to deliver your work if you don't have a methodology. You cannot create a self-study program that works so that while you are sleeping or while you are in Bali doing a yoga retreat, okay, if you don't have that created, and a self-study program requires that there is a framework operating, okay? Also, and this is important to understand, you cannot price your offer at a premium without full justification of what you do and how you help people. If you cannot demonstrate the specific, repeatable value of your process, then you cannot sell it at a big ticket price. And this is what I know, this is what people have experienced because they come to me and that's how I help them. And the other thing, when you're working purely by your intuition, you cannot protect your intellectual property because there's nothing defined to protect. And that is not cute. That is not spiritual. That is unorganized, unprepared, and you're going to need to be an employee all your life because if you don't take your business seriously, you're going to be you're going to be working for somebody else. And there's one other thing that a methodology does that I want to share, and that it's that it gives your clients the confidence during the parts of their transformation that feels uncertain or uncomfortable. And this is where it gets really, really good because if you're taking people through transformation and they are not experiencing discomfort, then you're not doing your job. When someone is in the middle of a very difficult transformation and they cannot yet see the results, it's the methodology that tells them they are not lost. If you're working solely on your intuition, then it's like, nope, they can't really trust that they're putting all their trust in you as opposed to putting their trust into something that's bigger than you. And we want, as a business, we want the business to be bigger than us. Because, let's face it, as humans, we can only do so much. We're bound by time, we're bound by our energy, we're bound by our perspective, we're bound by our focus. And even though God can work through you and bring more and more and more, the fact is that if you want to have sustainable income, if you want to have a business that is delivering you more and more people and getting you more and more exposure, more and more visibility, you need a system that's behind you helping you do that. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I want to hop in here and get you all going with the process. All right. So again, I want to remind you that a methodology is not a curriculum. It's not just a list of topics that you teach or a list of services or even a sequence of modules that you have put together. All those things are good. But your methodology is a repeatable, structured process for producing a specific transformation. And that transformation, if you're a coach, needs to be measurable, and tangible, and it needs to be what your client actually wants. So you want to be able to have a methodology that will deliver your clients and you to that outcome that is highly desirable. And that's what we're going to be working on today. So, okay, so let's look at step one. If you want, I should have told you this earlier, you guys, sorry. I think it's great to have a pen and a paper so that you can actually write this down. I think it's important. There are 4 steps. And I know that a lot of you, if you're already a coach, you've gone through a certification program, but I know that a lot of certification programs do not actually help you develop your own methodology. And I strongly believe that your methodology should be rooted in your unique experience, your unique perspective, and your particular values. Even if you're borrowing someone else's methodology. So, for example, I was certified as a completion process practitioner by Teal Swan. And I love her methodology. You know, I went to Utah and I studied with her, and I got the book, but she also took us through every single part. And I was able to listen to her and to really take on all these different things. And I was able to experience the transformation, the breakdown, the transformation, working through the steps. It was very, very good. However, any methodology, I believe, is better when the practitioner is fully in harmony with it, because they're bringing their own flavor to it. Now, there were many practitioners, like Teal's style was very much about listening, and there was a force that she held. And so she was a part of her process. Okay, she had her method, but part of her process was to break down her client before they even got into the chair. Coming in for her triggered was a part of the process. It wasn't built into the methodology, but her unique flavor was to activate the trigger so that she could bring it in. Now, what I noticed was that a lot of the people who worked with her were very intuitive and sensitive. Empathic is the word that I wanted to say, not intuitive. They were intuitive, but the word that I wanted was empathic. And so when they were going through the completion process, a lot of their time was spent feeling and listening with their own bodies, you know, taking on the energy, revisiting and feeling things. And that's what I liked about it. I mean, my process, I'm a much more, I'm very masculine. And so for me, when I'm doing that kind of work, you know, I work as a channel. So I bring in my spirit guides. And so a lot of my spirit guides do my healing work. I don't consider myself a healer. I consider myself a mentor, a coach, an architect, but I consider myself very strongly to be a channel. So whenever I'm doing healing work, I'm working with the angelic realm because that's just what I was born into. So I work with those. I also work with the Devic realm. I also work with the elemental realm. I'm told who to work with when I'm doing the work, like when I'm in there. So that's the flavor that you get when you have the completion process with me. So again, my point is that you can have a method that you're using, that you're borrowing from someone, but you want to be showing up with your own method that you have thought through, that you have philosophized about and developed. And that's what I want to start you with right now. All right, here we go. Step one is to identify your central transformation. So the thing that you transform, what is that? Write it down. So every methodology is basically built around one transformation, not this giant list of benefits, okay? But there needs to be one clear, specific movement from one state to another. And here's the thing. As a side note, it's easy for you to identify the state. It's not so easy to identify what to do with that state. So just as a side note, when you're developing your methodology, you definitely want to be focusing on the state shift, right? So I'm moving from a a, a, a low self-esteem into a place of confidence. That's a shift that is worthwhile, okay? When you're writing your copy to get paid, okay, and you're putting it out there, you need to explain what it looks like to be low self-esteem, not just, oh, I'm going to help you go from low self-esteem to confidence. No, that's too generic. You're going to have to say something like, I help you go from low self-esteem, which you could mean, being unconfident with men, or having, not going for a good job, or, accepting not getting promoted at work, whatever your niche is. That is the first state. And then the last state, the outcome that you have to be able to talk about in your copy, in your marketing copy, that is the actual outcome. You're going to get a job, you're going to get the guy, you're going to make more money, all those kinds of things. Okay. That's just a side note. Let me stay on point because I've only got a few minutes left. So step one is to write down the transformation. Your job in this step is to complete this sentence. I take people from blank to blank. All right. And so again, I want you to have the from should be a specific situation, a specific feeling, or a condition that your ideal client is in when she finds you or when she's reaching out to you. The to is the specific result, state, or capability that she has when she has completed your process. So from A to B, what is that state? What is that result? And if you can be very specific, what is the outcome? That's going to be even better. All right. So yeah, the more specific, the better. The stronger your methodology is, and the more you're going to talk to people, because people love it when they hear the exact thing that they want. When they hear that, that's when they buy. That's magic right there. All right. Okay. Now, so the next step is going to be about your personal story, and asking yourself where you've personally made this transformation. That's kind of like a part of the same step. I shouldn't say that that's the next step. First, you identify the transformation. I go from point A to point B, and then you need to find that in yourself. That's, I think, an important thing. That's a part of the first step. It's not really its own step. Just write down how did that transformation look in your life? And then write how that relates to your clients. You can describe like where you started, what the journey looked like, and describe where you have arrived. And the more detail you write this in, the better. And that's like your raw material. Okay, let's go into step two right now. There are 4 steps, so we're on step 2. So step 2 is to extract your pillars. So, what do I mean by that? Well, once you are clear on that central transformation, the next step is to identify the distinct phases, dimensions, or the areas of work that bring that transformation together. These are your pillars. So they are the major components of your methodology. Now, most methodologies are somewhere between like 3 and 7 pillars. If you have only two, that's not really a pillar. That's not really a methodology. That's just a couple of choices or like a couple of steps. It feels too weak. It feels thin. It doesn't feel like you've thought things through, and then on the other hand, more than 7 can feel very overwhelming and it can feel almost too vague. It's like too much to take on. So to find your pillars, look back at your journey that you talked about in step 1 and ask yourself what had to change in order for that transformation to happen. So it's not just what you learned, but what you had to actually shift in your thinking, your behavior, in your identity, in your skills. Like what skills did you have to learn? Mindset is number 1, if you ask me. But also maybe you had to change something in your environment. Maybe you had to change something with your relationships, okay? So each distinct category of shift is a candidate to become a pillar. And then you can look at your client work. So, when you're using your intuition, if you think back to all the people that you've used your intuition with, you will notice that it's probably not random. There's probably a way that you have of engaging with people, and there are certain things that you notice about every single session that is the same. So you want to start making note of those things. What are some of the areas that you're always addressing? What are the conversations you find yourself having again and again? What are the stuck points that show up repeatedly across different clients? Each of these patterns is pointing toward a pillar. So, your job is to write out a list of everything that comes up around like how you look at things and really sit down with your journal and think back across your clients. Boy, God will really start to show you those patterns when you look at it and then start writing them down. Okay. And I really would love it. I have a new community that I'm starting, and it's called the Spiritual Business Hub. And it's where, um, number 1, I have the cheat sheets for my weekly spiritual business hour sessions. So you are invited to join those. You're invited to join those sessions, and to join that community. There's a link in the comments, like somewhere here, wherever the description is. There's a link to join the hub. It's absolutely free to join, and you'll get the replays of the videos. We have the cheat sheets, and then there's a community of people, and you can bring your work there. And any work you bring there, I'm happy to look at and to give you feedback on. Okay, so please sign up and join me for the hub. In the meantime, so I want you to write out a list of everything that comes up. Write down your pillars, and understand that those groupings become your pillars. Those patterns and the little roadmaps that you find are your pillars. And keep in mind that your pillars should describe the changes that are happening in your clients, not what you do as a coach. Your mindset is um, the mindset work is something that you do, but developing an unshakable belief in the value of your work is something that changes in the client. So pillars named from the client's experience are far more powerful and far more marketable than pillars named from the practitioner's activities. So write out between 3 and 7 pillars for your methodology. Give each one a working name. It doesn't have to be perfect yet, but write 2 to 3 sentences describing what shifts in the client as a result of working through the pillar. All right. Okay, I'm really at the end of my time here. So step 3, you want to map the sequence pillars on, okay, sorry. You want to, what did I call it? Yeah, it is right. That's right. So you want to create a map. You want to create a pillar map. Pillars on their own are just components, right? So your methodology requires some kind of a sequence. And please understand, and this is super important, just because you are just because you have a framework and a methodology does not mean that you cannot do your framework or methodology. And actually, there is an art to creating a framework and methodology that allows you as the practitioner to be fluid in it so that the framework and methodology stay put and are strong, but you can move gracefully through them as you want. My methodology, when I first started out, excuse me, my methodology was shadow work, healing, and light work. And I had all kinds of woo-woo in between those 3 things. So a client would come in and we'd, I would see where they are. And when I was selling them, I would say, yeah, I've got shadow work, healing, and light work. Those are the 3 things that we're going to move through. And I said, it's about 4 sessions of each. And there were 13 sessions. We did the first session was sitting down and getting objectives and, getting really clear on what the client wanted and moving them, mapping out a plan of how we would move through those outcomes. Well, what was wonderful was that we were able to do it so easily because I would use my intuition. And when the client came in, nobody ever said, are we going to do shadow work today? Or when do I do shadow work? When do we do light work? Nobody ever did that. We would just move into them using the intuition. And I would say, okay, this sounds like we're going to need to be doing some shadow work. Oh, the energy is stuck. We're going to be doing some healing today. But the clients all knew what those things meant because I explained it as a part of my methodology at the very beginning. That's why they paid me. So I want to encourage you to take this very seriously. Understand that your methodology requires a sequence, which is a specific order in which your components are addressed, and there's a logic for why the order matters. However, if you're like me, you don't necessarily have to talk about the logic of the order. You just want to make sure that they understand that they shouldn't skip levels. Okay, they need to stick with this methodology first before they move into another methodology. That's important to understand. Otherwise, you're going to have people flying over here. They're going to be with you today. Then they're going to be over there with somebody else tomorrow. You need time with your people in order for it to work. So that's why you want to make sure that you talk to them about that order and where your methodology fits in. That sequence is what makes your methodology teachable and repeatable, especially if you are wanting to scale. It's what allows you to say to a client, we start here, then we move here, and here is why that order produces better results than kind of just being random. You've got to be able to say that, and you have to be able to deliver. And if you don't know how to deliver on it yet, that's okay. You just learn. You can always reach out to me and ask. That's why I'm here. All right. So to find your sequence, you want to ask yourself, is there a natural order in which these pillars need to be addressed? Is there one that has to come before the others can work? Is there one that tends to unlock the rest? In most well-built methodologies, the sequence follows one of a few kind of I call them natural logics. The first is foundational. So you build from the ground up where each pillar creates the conditions for the next. And then the second one would be more cyclical, the pillars that are revisited repeatedly but they get deeper and deeper as the clients develop. And then the third would be developmental. So those pillars are corresponding to distinct stages of growth that build on one another progressively. Look at your pillars and ask which logic best describes the natural relationships between them, and then arrange them in the order that reflects that logic. And then once you have a working sequence, test it against your client experience. Does this order actually work, or do you need to be fluid? I need it to be fluid, right? And remember that if something feels out of place, activate your intuition, and you can just adjust things. So arrange your pillars in a sequence and, write it down, my friend. I'm being called to tell you to take a piece of paper, write them on a piece of paper, and then cut out those papers, and then you can play around with the sequencing. So write it down, then cut it out, and then put them in different orders and see if that helps you move things around. It helps me. I'm very I'm visual, but I'm also tactile. I need to see things in space. All right. And I need to touch things. That's what I mean. All right. So last step, you guys. I know I'm over time. I got a lot to say. But I'm almost done. So the last step is to name it and claim it. And a methodology without a name is invisible. So you get to name it. So you get to name your methodology. And doing this does a bunch of things. Okay. First of all, it makes you feel good, because it's going to make sense. When you say like scale, SCALE, that means blah, 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 blah. Those are the 5 steps of my methodology. Blah, 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 blah. Love that. Okay. Totally love that. It feels good to be able to say that, especially when it totally works. That feels really, really good. And that shows that you have done your work. All right. Stick a TM on the end of that, and you are like looking like you are a real pro. And you deserve that, especially if you've done the work. Yes, you do deserve it. If you've not done the work, then whatever. You're a child of God. You deserve whatever you get. It's true. Anyway, so naming it is really good. It separates you from other coaches. It signals to your ideal client that you have a defined process rather than just being vague. Okay. And you don't want to be vague. You don't want to be generic. Not today. There's no space for generic. Generic never wins today. I don't think it ever won, but you don't want to be generic right now. And keep in mind also, your name doesn't have to be clever. It just has to be clear, and it has to make sense, and it has to be yours. And there are several approaches to naming a methodology. The first, it can be descriptive, where your name tells you exactly what the process does. The second could be more metaphorical, like the name evokes an image or a concept that captures the essence of the transformation that you bring. And then the third is like proprietary. The name is a term that you have coined that becomes associated with your work specifically, like Badass Butterfly. That's my name. That's my business. I love it. So whatever approach you choose, the name should pass this test. When someone hears it, do they have a sense of what it is for and who it is for? And when they see your name alongside it, does it feel like it could only belong to you? Once you have a name, claim it. Use it consistently in your content, in your conversations, make videos about it, use it in your marketing. And that methodology is going to become a part of your brand. And that's how you build your business. So for your home fun, and we're wrapping it up right now, I want you to write out 5 to 10 possible names for your methodology. And, choose the best one. Play around with them, sit with it, run them by your friends and family and see what they say. All right. So thank you so much for watching, my friend. I'm so glad that you joined me, and thank you. Thank you for joining. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow with Badass for the Spiritual Business Hour again. So Fridays, it's Badass Beautiful Fridays, and I'm going to have my friend Renee. She's in the Dominican Republic, and she's beautiful and smart, and she's totally into yoga. She does yoga for face. We're going to be talking about the face tomorrow and how your face affects your business. All right, we're going to be looking at that tomorrow here on the Spiritual Business Hour, 2:00 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I'll see you then, my friend. Bye for now. Mwah. Bye, everybody.